Alright, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, and I'm going to be talking about aim. It's a topic that's already has tons of videos and guides, and it's been pretty much talked to death. However, I feel like some of the stuff I'm going to be sharing here isn't really covered, so I'm going to be putting all my aim experience into one video. And the purpose of this is if you're someone like me who really struggle with aim, being consistent, and maybe if you just want to try something new, this video is going to be for you. Before I get into any of the technical stuff, I'd like to talk about my philosophy on aim first. So at the end, you can draw your own conclusions if this is the same mindset you would like to achieve. The whole idea of aiming is you want your crosshair to go where you're shooting at. Sounds simple, but getting the mouse to go where you want it to go doesn't feel natural. The point of this video is so that your crosshair goes where you want it to naturally. But in order to get there, we have to learn some stuff that doesn't come naturally. When I was learning how to ride a motorcycle, I was in a class, and one of the hardest parts of learning was turns. One of the reasons it was so hard for all of us is that none of us turned our head and we looked through the turn and where we wanted to go. Because of the way it feels on two wheels, we all naturally look straight in front of us. I'll never forget when the instructor said, "Look at where you want to go and the bike will follow." Until this day, I remember this when I'm having a bad day in aiming. This is something I've been asked before, and that is, do I look at my crosshair or what I'm shooting at? And the answer is what I'm shooting at, and the hand will follow the eyes. If I had to guess, I would say on average, the everyday PC gamer using a mouse and keyboard doesn't have great aim. I know this will be controversial. Console gamers say PC lobbies are too sweaty, and if you're like me, I'm constantly complaining about aim assist. But for reference, way back in season 4 or 5, I can't remember, when crossplay became a thing, or it was an option, me and a buddy of mine were just getting wrecked all night until I had the bright idea of disabling crossplay. In our first game, we dropped 2k damage apiece and got a win. I remember this night very clearly because shortly after that, crossplay wasn't able to be turned off. With all that being said, I actually tried to mimic controller play aim more so than mouse and keyboard players. I know this sounds strange, but a few years back I had this idea, and I just could never shake the idea that I was onto something. And until this day, I try to aim like a controller player. Typically, a controller player has a lower sense, consistent, and overall good aim at most ranges. At least I did when I used controller. I played on controller for about 6 years before finally making the switch to PC, so I do have experience on both sides. I used aim trainers and did aiming exercises and all that, and for me, overall, they didn't really help much. They didn't hurt, but they didn't make my aim insane. But I will talk about what did next. Some of the best aimers in the world don't use aim trainers, and honestly, I don't recommend them. Now, on to basics. I'd like to cover something that is repeated in almost every video I've seen on aiming, and that is the quote, "Sensitivity is personal preference and everyone is different." To counter this, I would say, no, it's not. Your mouse pad can only be so big or so small, so there is a limit, and like it or not, most people fall into a few categories when it comes to aim. I feel like this would be the same as telling an NFL quarterback there isn't a right way to throw the football. There is. Even though there are some small differences between how professionals throw the ball, there is a philosophy behind it, and some of the most smart-minded people have spent millions and millions of dollars on how to get the throw just right. High sense, or what I'll call regular sense, since no one really plays on low sense anymore except for maybe Huskers, and I think he just changed it recently as a Warzone player. I think he's changed it to about double what he used to play on. He used to play on the same sense I did, which was a 1.5 400 DPI 69 centimeter 360. One of the best aimers in the world as far as I'm concerned, and he recently just changed it. And this doesn't come as a surprise to me is because how advanced the sensors are in mice these days, and I'll get to mice at the end of the video. The high sense and low sense thing is also called wrist aiming or arm aiming, and I feel like this is also wrong. At any sense you use your arm and wrist to aim. Like I said, when I played on a 69 centimeter 360, I still had to use my wrist and fingers to aim. In order to talk about the high sense and low sense, though, I need to talk about dexterity. Dexterity is basically how sensitive your mouse can be and are able to control it. Most people have a low dexterity. This is why some of the best Apex players in the world like Acel and Shroud, after quitting Apex for a couple of seasons, came back and had to lower their sensitivity. Most likely because their sense was set up after they had already been playing and were warmed up. They could still do well with their aim, but it wasn't their natural dexterity, which is why when they came back to the game, they both lowered their sensitivities. About 90% of people fall into this low sense category, whether they play on a high sense or not. If you're a streamer and you play for 8 to 12 hours a day, your dexterity tolerance will increase slightly, meaning you can play on a higher sense, but stop playing for several weeks and your sense won't match your natural dexterity. And the natural dexterity is the target here, and also one of the goals for this video. Finding the right sense will cut down on time for you to warm up as well. I would never set your sense after you have already been playing for a while. On that note, I probably wouldn't try to find my sense in a battle royale game either, since the gunfights and engagements sometimes happen 5 to 10 minutes apart. This isn't a great way to find how low or how high your sense should be. I would play a respawn game like COD, multiplayer for example, to get the consistent feel and accuracy. Also, a sign that your sense might be too high if you're having to warm up for 20 plus minutes to start feeling comfortable and hitting all your shots. For me, to warm up, it takes about 2 to 5 minutes. That's it. Warming up and practice are different. You should practice for more than 5 minutes, but if you need to get ready for a match, you shouldn't need longer than 5 minutes to start hitting your shots. If you do, you need to lower your sensitivity. Now I want to talk about first shot accuracy. First shot accuracy is really important on games like Valorant, Warzone, COD, multiplayer, stuff like that. A low sense player, it will give you, if you're a low sense player, this will give you a greater chance at first shot accuracy. However, it will give you a low chance for a follow-up shot versus a high sense player whose probability of hitting your first shot accuracy is low, but your probability of repositioning and getting yourself another shot at the player will be high. So this is one of the fundamental differences in high sense and low sense. High mobility, give yourself more chances. However, you're more likely to miss. Low sensitivity, highly likely to hit, but usually not able to follow up if you miss. So it is a trade-off. It's the high sense and low sense. It is a trade-off, but there is no perfect sense. The perfect sense pretty much does nothing well. It's not the best up close, and it's not the best far away. It's pretty much the jack of all trades, like controller. Now I want to talk about something that is never talked about in aiming videos, and that is the A and D keys. Personally, I control most of my recoil with these keys, and it is a very overlooked component in aiming, and I'll show you what that looks like right now. Right now, I'm pretty much just using the A and D key, and I'm controlling about 80 to 90% of the recoil here. Pretty much just pushing down on my mouse, and that's pretty much it. Doesn't matter how high or low your sensitivity is, as long as you get your crosshair in the middle on target and you strafe back and forth, you can pretty much hit most of your shots. Now let's talk about traditional aim, the 180 versus the 360. This is a kind of a debate in the aiming industry. But one of the best ways to start out in aiming is simply take your mouse from one end of your mouse pad to the other to complete a 360 if you're a high sense player, or a 180 if you're a low sense player. However, with different size mouse pads, to make things as simple as possible, I will just give you 3 sensitivities. On 400 dpi, I want you to set your sense to 1.5, then 2.4, and then 3.4. 1.5 will be your low sense players, 2.4 will be your medium or regular sense, as I like to say, because a lot of people play on the 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and 3.4 will be your high sense players. That'll be in the Acel range. Most people fall into one of these 3 categories, and I will wager that you will probably do the best on one of these 3 sensitivities. Now let's talk about the 1-to-1 ratio and not 1-to-1 ratio aiming methods. Most pro players use a 1-to-1 aim ratio. All this means is their aim down sight speed matches their hip fire speed, or a 1x ADS multiplier, or 1.0. However, some pros like Flanker from Apex and Symphony from Warzone opt to change this with an ADS speed as low as 0.6 and for Flankers, and I believe for Symphonies, I think he plays on like 0.67 or 77, something like that. So there's a couple of reasons why you would want to do this, but I feel most people aren't good enough to set two different sensitivities, and I'll call it kind of a cheat because you are using two different sensitivities and you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a fast turnaround speed and a low laser aim whenever you're aiming down sights. For Warzone, this can work really well. However, if you play Apex and you count on your hipfire just as much as your ADS, this can lead to diminishing returns. After all, you're basically using two different sensitivities. However, a few pro players have had success using this method. Alright, let's talk about recoil. At a lower sense like the 1.5 I mentioned earlier, your first shot accuracy will be really good. However, the lower your sense, the more you'll have to correct for recoil and your mouse movements will be bigger. Higher sense players laugh at recoil because at 3.4, most of your concentration will be on just hitting the target rather than controlling recoil. Once again, a trade-off between high and low sense. But if you're still struggling, some modern mouse software has the X and Y axis DPI enabled, and if you're having difficulties in controlling either horizontal recoil or vertical recoil, you can change it on your mouse, like here in Razer Synapsis. X is for horizontal and Y for vertical. You can easily negate 90% of recoil here. However, there are a few drawbacks as you will not be playing on a 1-to-1 ratio and tracking may be difficult. But for some games this works rather well. Now if you've gotten this far and tried everything I've mentioned in this video and still can't seem to master your aim, there is a forgotten art of aiming that you can try. However, I will warn you, very few people have mastered aim enough in order to use this method, and originally started back when Quake Live was around. And that is the lost art of mouse acceleration and angle snapping, which is the only non-cheating aim assist for mouse and keyboard that no one uses. And this is what my whole career is based off of, and is not widely used because it is so hard to master. The two programs I use is either ProvoHat's mouse accel driver or raw accel. The best way to describe how it is like a slingshot or a whip. The faster you flick your mouse, the faster your mouse moves, which is different than traditional aiming where it doesn't matter how fast you move to get to one point on your mouse pad. Your mouse will only go as fast as once it reaches a certain point on the mouse pad. This is why the term muscle memory is taught so frequently in videos, which is a real thing by the way. Ask any professional athlete, be it a baseball player or a football player or even soccer. Your muscles learn over time, and when you call on them to repeat an action, your muscles can do it flawlessly after a lot of practice. For simplicity's sake, I will just give you one curve that I used when I first started using ProvoHat's mouse accel, and that is a sense multiplier of 0.7 on linear, acceleration 0.01, a cap output of 1.3, and that's it, on 800 DPI and 1.5 in game. Remember my aiming philosophy from the beginning of the video? Well, now you can start to see how it all comes together here, because the program raw accel or ProvoHat's mouse accel driver is basically giving you the same settings as what controllers have, because most controller players utilize acceleration. They just don't realize it. That's how most controller players can set a fast turnaround speed, by using the ALC settings here. A fast turnaround speed and a very controlled ADS speed and hipfire speed. That is the point of the whole video. In conclusion, if you're still having issues with aim, leave me a comment and tell me how your aiming story is going. I'm still around for coaching sessions and you can reach me by email, but there is no real shortcut to having good aim. It takes a lot of dying, a lot of practice, and a lot of hard work, which is why not a lot of people stick it out on low sense. Most people try for a few hours and then go right back to their same old ways and live in the middle when it comes to aim. So good luck to all of you on your aiming journey. I hope this helps, and we'll see you again real soon.